Appamada and its programs are supported by your generosity, and your generosity and support makes such a difference. You can find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org. Thank you.
Good morning. Morning to all of you in the Zendo and all of you online. It's great to see you this morning. I know a lot of people have gone off to their respective other places to go, homes and what have you for Thanksgiving, and so it's nice to see so many despite that. So I'd like to welcome as well, besides you all present at the moment, those who might be listening from other sanghas in the future. Not sanghas in the future, listening in the future. Anyway, from Madison, Chicago, Minnesota, England, Switzerland, and Hawaii. I'd like to start first with some announcements. First of all, we are closed, officially closed. The center is closed on Thursday and Friday of this week. It's in celebration of Thanksgiving here in the United States. And it's a time for people to rest and reflect, even though the center's closed. However, Rosemary will have, was offering a sitting for those who do want to gather and sit together. And she has a link out. I think it went out to the Sangha at large, right? Yeah, so you might look for that email if you're interested in joining that for Thursday and Friday mornings. Also, I'd like to announce my one-day sit that's coming up the weekend of, it's next weekend, oh gosh, I think. It's the 2nd and 3rd of December. And the theme of it is holding our suffering in spaciousness. So I'd love to have you there. We'll be doing the shorter sits, I think the 20-minute sits, and then walking meditation on and off, and then we'll have a Dharma talk on Friday night, and then one Saturday morning, and then an activity on Sunday or Saturday afternoon. So all are welcome. Please come. Anything else that anybody has to announce? Oh, one of our Sangha members has an art show over at a local library, Yard World Library. Is it still going on?
Right?
It's over.
It's
Oh,
over.
she had it. You missed it. It was great. Never mind. Okay, anything else, Kim? Nothing? Okay. So this morning when I came, I had a very wonderful, rare experience. I actually saw the sunrise this morning. That doesn't usually happen. I'm usually here or in bed, one or the other. And so it was so beautiful. It was this bright pink, which I haven't seen in a really long time, and blues, and gee whiz, there were a lot of different colors if I look at it from the sense of an artist. But anyway, it was very beautiful, and it was so lovely to see, and seeing it, particularly because I don't see it very often. I really appreciated it, and it's, looking at something that is greater than yourself, drawing you in. It's just a lovely experience looking at the sunset or the sunrise in this case. And I had felt a sense of a sigh of relief for whatever reason. So anyway, today I'm going to be talking about right view, and people will say, oh gosh, haven't we heard enough about that? But I strongly believe that it's a core teaching, and I think that sometimes we forget what that's about, and it's about the Four Noble Truths. But I'm going to bring it up again just because I think it's worth thinking about. So, yeah, I mean, it's essential to the practice. And so, since this is the essential parts of the practice are sitting, and another essential part is the practicing with the Four Noble Truths. So, right view, according to the Buddha, is a kind of wisdom, and it consists of two parts. One is a conceptual right view, which is a clear intellectual grasp of the Dharma. And when we're talking about the Dharma, we're talking specifically about the Four Noble Truths. And so we have conformity with the Four Noble Truths, then we'll have a correct understanding. And that will come after examination and study. It's not just a matter of reading it every now and again, but really understanding it and working through it. The second part of the right view is, not surprisingly, the experiential right view, intellectual and experiential. And this is actually the wisdom that directly penetrates the Dharma, Four Noble Truths, and it evolves from the conceptual right view. So the idea is you get a conceptual, intellectual idea of what the Four Noble Truths are about, and then you get an experiential through that. And okay, so what are the Four Noble Truths? So basically, it's the first noble truth is that there is suffering or dissatisfaction in this life, this human life. The second is that there's an origin of this suffering. Thirdly, there is cessation of suffering. And the fourth is the way leading to cessation, which is the Eightfold Path. Okay. So normally sentient beings, such as ourselves, roam and wander in samsara because they haven't understood or penetrated the Four Noble Truths. And as the chain of dependent origination shows, what lies at the base of the causal genesis of suffering is ignorance. So ignorance is at the bottom of it. And ignorance is defined by the Buddha, is the unawareness of the Four Noble Truths. So that's how critical they are. So the path to liberation culminates with the realization of the Four Noble Truths. The realization, and realization, that meaning of the word realization, not just knowing what they are, but actually realizing it. That means actually embodying them. So the Buddha teaches them because they lead to enlightenment and nirvana. So very simple. And the antidote for ignorance is knowledge, again, which is that's knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. So there's the first penetration of the Four Noble Truths is the breakthrough of the Dharma. And that's according to the Buddha, and what he writes, and this is according to the words of the Buddha. It's really hard to do. He had to tell his disciples over and over and over again that this is what they need to do, is penetrate the Four Noble Truths. But without doing so, it is impossible to put an end to suffering. So we have to keep trying and trying to work those Four Noble Truths. And he also told them it is an extraordinary effort. It requires an extraordinary effort to achieve. But once you go through the breakthrough part, then you can see the tasks associated with each truth. And all, you see the tasks related to each noble truth. So the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. So the idea here is to fully understand what the suffering is. And the suggestion, in the words of the Buddha, is looking at aggregates. So what are the aggregates that we always found us, as we always talk about? What are those things anyway? So it's form. If you think of the learning record, for those of you who have gone through the precepts, the learning record is a list of the skandhas. So form, feeling, perception. Then they talk about volitional formation, and then consciousness. So volitional formation to me is like identity. And then the consciousness, your consciousness. So, and it's like you're seeing form as self, or seeing form, your feelings as self. That is self, or perception, like the same way. Or consciousness is self. And this, so it's this block, it's this thing that we attach to. So, so that's what happens in the truth of suffering. And so what we're doing in that, with the aggregates is that, or the skandhas, is we're clinging to them or attaching to them, right? So the second noble truth, so I'm gonna go ahead and divide this up this way. So in that, if we understand this suffering, the truth of suffering, so we could take a particular, I'm gonna take a particular example. This is the holidays, and for a lot of people, the holidays are tough. I don't mean to ignore you guys. I feel like I have my back to you. The holidays are a hard time, and it's usually because there's a lot of suffering. We don't, it's hard when people get together, they haven't seen each other, or they have feelings about the way things should be, or they don't like this, and they don't want to accommodate someone else, or they do accommodate, and then they're resentful over it. So there's all sorts of food for fodder for practicing with the Four Noble Truths. So with the truth of suffering, the task then is actually to understand one's suffering. So, okay, so I'm going to Dallas, and what I can anticipate is lots of people, including myself, having ideas about the way it should go. In my mind, I think everybody should get along. They should just give it up and get along. Of course, that's my idea, and it's probably based on my way of looking at things, which may not be the same as theirs. So there you go. So there's my suffering. So you start there, and you really examine what it is that you're holding on to, the thing that what is the suffering first? What are you attached to? You want to have a good time, or you want the meal to be this way, or whatever it is. Just take a small thing. And then you go to the next step, and you say, once you realize what that suffering is, what that kind of looks like, the truth of its origin. So the question is, the suffering is one thing, and then we want to know, why is it arising? What is it that I'm clinging to? What is my attachment? What exactly is my attachment? Well, I want it to go the way I want it to go. I want people to be happy, and I want everybody to get along in one place. So that's my clinging. That's what I have a sense of. And that's the origin of my suffering, is wanting it a certain way. The suffering is that I'm not happy going up there because I don't get what I want. But the second thing is I'm attached to, I want this idea that everything should go a certain way. And then the third thing, the truth of cessation, must be realized. In order to have cessation of suffering, we've got to let go of the craving. It's a matter of let go of craving. So what we have clinging, We cling to something, but what is the craving underneath it? So you have to look deeper to find out what is the actual craving. In my case, I think the craving is actually, I don't want to be anxious. And for me to be anxious means everybody has to get along. How absurd is that? But anyway, that's the craving. It's based on my feelings of, not being anxious about people fussing with each other and not getting along and blah, blah, blah. So once you realize the craving, the clinging and then the craving, the clinging is what you're attached to, and then the craving for something that's underneath that, how do we let go of that? How do we let go of that? And that's tricky, that's the hardest part, right? That's the hardest part. How do we let go of our own stuff enough to let things just be as they are, instead of wanting it to be something else? And that's a real task. It's a task. But I think in really sitting with it and understanding ourselves, why does that feel essential to me? Why is that craving so strong in me that I need to have it this way? Well, for me, anxiety is just something that comes up. Well, it comes up because that's my baseline a lot of times, but also it's this dis-ease, underlying dis-ease. And I need to let go of that. And I need to let go of that. Craving harmony. Not wanting to be anxious. Wanting to people get along. All that put together. So it seems to me that the craving, letting go of craving, is a lot about really looking at what is and how it is that we can be with what is. And that's the ultimate question. How do we navigate difficulty? How can we be okay with all the turmoil and the upset? Indeed. Well, it's partially where the Eightfold Path comes in. Learning how to be with whatever is requires a lot of things. It requires this right view, clearness of what's going on. How do we let people be who they are? How do we do that? I think the first step is realizing who we are and what we do, and being so compassionate with that. Who is it that's clamoring for something, clamoring for peace, clamoring for getting together, people being together? Who is that? It's usually some little kid inside of us. It's been trained to just do something or other. But I think if we get really, it's that turn in our practice where we go to where our suffering is, and who is it that's clamoring? What is it that's clamoring inside of us, making demands on the way things have to be, and then taking care of that one in some way or fashion, being compassionate with it the way it may not have been taken care of at another time in the life, as a child. So that's a lot of work just for going up for the holidays, but I think it's worth it. Because then we don't bring a bunch of baggage along. Bringing certain ideas about the way things are, we can, a little bit easier for us to be comfortable with just the way it is, and the way that people are, the way they are. And if we bring a certain amount of peace in our hearts, it's really contagious. And I think that's the way it works. Now, technically, according to the writings of the Buddha, the fourth noble truth is the truth of the way, which is what I've been talking about in this last part. And the eightfold path, he says, must be developed. In developing the path, it leads to the completion of the four tasks, taking care of each of them. At which point one reaches the destruction of the taints. That's another set of language, but it's learning how to let go of these things that we're so attached to and that we so crave. And it's hard work, but it makes a difference in our lives and the lives of the people around us. Just that attitude of being led. So, what I thought we might do together is a little practice. I think, are there any questions? Yes. Yes, my teacher.
Okay, so there's sickness, old age, and death.
Yes.
And they cause suffering. And then there's a little mental gymnastics we can do, right? Where, or not, but where we realize that it's our attachment that causes the suffering. But I'm not comfortable with that there's this cerebral process to say, well, it's not really sickness, old age, and death, but my attachment to life, to being well, to being this and this and this. So
Okay.
I don't know how to get around being a trickster here.
Yeah, well, with old age, sickness, and death, those are the inevitables, right? They have to happen. So this other stuff is, I'm kind of talking about other things. I think a human being, there's a certain amount of, we don't want to cut off our emotions. That's just not healthy. We have to have that. So I think when we have old age, sickness, and death, we have a certain amount of grieving going on there, and that's a part of the human process that it's going to happen. That doesn't mean you don't try to work with it and don't take things out on other people or that kind of thing. But I think that the healing of the heart is something that has to happen anyway, and it's not tricking it. You just have to go through grief. But this other stuff, when we have these other things that we have created ourselves over our lifetime, the things were our experiences and that kind of thing, it's a separate category altogether. Is that? Okay. Yeah. And so when you have old age, sickness, and death, I don't think it's tricking yourself. We'll take old age, for example. I'm suffering because I'm growing old. What does that mean? Well, I don't have the energy I had before. My body aches. I can't do as much as I can before. I don't look so good. In comparison to my youth. Yeah, so we have all those complaints. So I think those we can look at. Yes, it's unfortunate we're getting old. It's a natural process. We know that. It's hard to swallow that. But I think it is a matter of working with it and understanding it. In this culture, it's hard to grow old because there's no appreciation for the elders. But I think that that's something that we work with, understanding. We find our cohorts and we commiserate about, well, this is difficult and what can we do to manage it. But again, if it turns into something where you're creating barriers to the rest of the world because of it, that's when you need to go to the Four Noble Truths and figure out what is it that you're really attached to. What is that clinging and whatever specific thing. Okay, I can't do as much anymore. Yeah, I can't. But you come to a realization, if you think about it or notice, I can't do as much. But I do notice that the quality in which I do things is a lot better in the sense of I'm paying more attention. Whereas before I was flying through getting a million things done. So I see a benefit to it as well. Maybe that's mental gymnastics. I don't think so. I think there's some truth to that. Sickness. Yeah. Sickness is inevitable as well. But sickness, it's a weird thing, and we've seen it in this sendo where people have been very sick. And the way they worked with it, they were glowing despite their sickness. They were as loving and caring as much or as more as anybody I've ever seen. So there's always a way to work with that stuff as well. And death, well, if it's your own, you don't have to worry about it because it's your own, but if you're already dead. But dealing with approaching death or something, yeah, I mean, that is the ultimate probably. But there are always things that can be worked with. There's a great film that was out, Ram Dass, as he was, I think you watched it, didn't you? No, anyway, about his dying in his last part and his working the whole way through it and talking about it and talking about the difficulties and then constantly understanding, coming to some understanding about it. So I think even in those things, you can work through it. Because what is the point of all of it? What is the point of our life anyway? Is it to keep living?
It seems more like immersion than escapism.
That's right. That's right. And the immersion, well, of course, the Four Noble Truths is a way to immerse yourself, but yeah, you stay with where you are and realize what that is. Yeah. Is that answer your question? Okay. You're back. Yay. So I'd like to know how that was for you all. Does anybody have any comments or anything they want to share? Jeanette. Nancy, where is Nancy? Here she is.
Oh, yeah, she's muted, but
she's
then
muted.
she muted.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Well, I wanted to share, if that's okay. Did you want to maybe hear about an experience?
Sure.
I know that you said not to tackle a big suffering, but I have shifted a lot around this particular suffering very recently, and so it's not the epic suffering it was before, what I identified was that my suffering is an experience of pain from being excluded. I was pretty radically excluded from a Christmas gathering at my stepfamily's house last year, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. So my attachment is to other people, these people, behaving as if I'm a core member of the family, and acting in ways that make me feel like I belong. And the craving under that is for belonging and love. And the way that I believe I can best address it, well, there are two ways actually. One way was I realized this past week, I remembered a time when my stepsister, I had just moved, I was alone in my new rental house, and it was my birthday, and she came over with a knapsack full of an entire birthday dinner and a cocktail and left it with me. And it shifted me from resentment to gratitude. And the other thing that's helping is spending time while sitting with the parts of me, the child parts of me, the infant parts of me that are clamoring to feel like they belong and that they're loved and that, you know, they're not alone. So that's my sharing.
Thank you, Jeanette. Great. Does anybody else have anything they want to say or share? Kim.
So one of my sufferings is that my hands are cold. And it just immediately appeared, came to me that, so why can't I just think of this as being a kind of a state rather than something to have an opinion about?
Yeah.
And I've been thinking a lot about things in nature and how they don't whine.
That's right. That's
So
right.
whatever the condition is, I'm short of water or.
Yeah, I think that's something to think about sometimes.
Sometimes my hands are going to be cold, sometimes they're going to be warm. They're never going to be perfect.
Yeah, and I think, again, in this country in general, not with everybody, but we're so used to having everything just
And we have a mechanical solution of turning the
Thermostat.
thermostat down or up.
Yeah.
We turn this little dial. And then if we don't have a dial, I don't have a dial here, so I'm frustrated.
Yeah, so that's, yeah. Okay, well, nothing else, we will.
Yeah, Joe wants to say something.
Oh, okay, Joel, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you, and thanks for unmuting me, Nancy. Well, I was in a group with Darcy and Nancy, and I was just reflecting on how you, in your setup for examining the issues that we could talk about, you framed it in terms that had a lot for me to do with connection with other people, and how it is that we typically crave a lot of connection with other people, and because of the way we grow up, because of the way things happen in the world, we lose those connections, and we experience that as a lot of pain. And that's what I wrote about and what I discussed. But I want to say that the chance to
Uh-oh.
I think you froze.
different, very. Oh, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back now, could you start?
Any luck?
We missed a
The
little
chance
space in there.
to, the chance.
The chance to, oh, I'm sorry, my internet connection is unstable, it says.
Well, we hear you right now.
For a second. No, we don't.
Oh, now you're frozen. Darn, I wanted to hear what he had to say.
Oh, yeah. You're frozen.
Well, he's frozen.
I'm so sorry to make you wait for that. Am I back? Okay, it looks,
Yes.
I see everybody moving now. I had to switch Wi-Fi channel.
Oh, good.
So anyway, I just wanted to say it was wonderful to be able to have the healing experience of connecting with Darcy and Nancy as they were talking about things that were important to them. And that gives, there's an element of freedom in that. And then I must say, for me, also an element of reinforcing the clinging to the desire to want to connect that's so hard in other areas, that this is a special kind of a connection, but it is a wonderful learning experience. And I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Joe. And
So
Yeah.
one thing, I just wanted to say, I listened yesterday to a radio cast, Hidden Brain, Shankaridantam, and he was talking about this very thing. He was talking to, the Surgeon General about his book about loneliness and belonging, and it was really wonderful. If anybody has the chance to look up that podcast, it was great. Nice to know. And then I think Darcy had a
Oh, Darcy?
Darcy, yes.
I was trying to figure out how to raise my virtual hand, but okay, now. So we had a really rich discussion, and I'm going to add something that I didn't say when we were talking, the three of us, because I could so relate to you, Joel, on it's really a deep desire to connect, which is a lovely thing. And for me, with my family member, I had to figure out how to keep that deep, lovely longing to connect while also not being attached to it. And had a difficult conversation with my brother last week, and it was letting go of the expectation that he would have the same sort of longing, or it would be expressed in the same way as for me, that allowed me to be there with that in that field of liberation, you know? So anyway, I thought I'd add that. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but so it came up.
Yes. Thank you, Darcy. Okay, so I guess we'll turn to our the rest of our service. And, thank you very much for your participation.